when I first got into it and I decided to be serious, the director of all of rowing for adaptive side looked at me and just like looked at my body size and was judged me on my body build of, well, you don't have what it, first of all, how dare she say, like, I don't have what it takes to be an elite athlete, but then also my body size. And my body, of course, I'm smaller build, but I can change that. And she has no idea that that was like that last coal, and that threw in the fire pit that like really just made my fire within me like roar, because my whole entire life I was told like what I can and can't do.
Welcome to Imposters, the show where I have revealing conversations with world-class execs, athletes, and entertainers about their personal challenges and how overcoming those challenges has shaped their careers and lives for the better. I'm your host, Alex Lieberman, co-founder and executive chairman of Morning Brew. My guest today is Oksana Masters. Born with birth defects from the Chernobyl disaster in the 1980s, Oksana lived in 3 different orphanages in Ukraine until the age of 7. Over the course of her childhood, she endured multiple surgeries, including getting both of her legs amputated. At the age of 13, she discovered rowing and brought home her first of 17 Paralympic medals in 4 different sports. In 2018, she won her first gold medal at the Winter Paralympic Games, all while she had a broken elbow. Oksana not only manages the many pressures of being an elite level athlete, but also the physical and emotional journey of living without her legs. As she mentions, it's a struggle every day. She is no doubt someone who believes there's no limits to her abilities and has pushed the boundaries to what is possible. Oksana Masters, thank you so much for joining Imposters.
Thank you, Alex, for having me.
So we're going to start way back at the beginning. And at the beginning, you were born with birth defects due to utero radiation from the Chernobyl disaster. And then you spent your childhood in 3 different orphanages, I believe. Mm-hmm. Can you just share, obviously it was very early in your life, but from your own memory, what that experience was like for you, or even as you reflect on it today?
Yeah, so I don't remember the first 2 orphanages that well. I have weird smells and like sounds that I'll remember. That'll bring me back to a memory, but it's the last orphanage when you're 5, you're considered an adult. So you move into the adult orphanages where you go from 5 to 16. And that's the last year from 6 to 7 is what I remember the most, so vividly, like what I feel like on my body and the smells and just clear pictures when I close my eyes. And it was, I mean, exactly what you might think the word orphanage sounds like. It's obviously not the ideal place or way for any child to grow up, especially in an Eastern European orphanage. There was a lot of, especially small little village that I was living in. And yeah, without like getting too dark right away from the start, it was definitely, I think where I guess in some weird way, like that's where I learned how to gain strength and be resilient because we didn't have food. So I was starving to death when I was adopted, wasn't given a lot of chance to live a long life after I came to America. There
was no food in the orphanage?
There was some. So my orphanage was combined. It was a government-ran one. So there's small local ones, and then there's a government run. And they called them internats. And it was like a boarding school, but not the boarding school like in the UK that people think is very, you send your kids there. But so it's like, it was a boarding school where people within that village, if they didn't have resources, they would pay a small amount and those kids would go and live there. And they would get like room, food, education. On a separate wing of that building was an actual orphanage. And that was through the government. And that's where we didn't have the food or the resources for any medical stuff or I had clothes that was so big that you just like put on from other kids' clothes when they leave or if they pass away. It was, no food. I think I love salt because we had really salty broth. I don't know what they did, but that must have been what they flavored, and that was the food. But so I was starving to death because of that. There was a lot of different types of abuse that was going on. And I think that was the hardest thing that I struggled because I didn't know it was abuse as a little kid, besides just pain, which was, yeah, like hard to comprehend. And it wasn't until I came to America that I really understood the magnitude of what was wrong that I experienced and what was my normal at that time.
Yeah. And what has been just like the process over the course of your life of just unpacking kind of all of this, more trauma in the first 10 years of your life than I would say, you'd wish on any human being in their entire life? Like, what has been your process for unpacking these things? And do you have an ability to kind of reflect on these experiences today in an open way where it can be so easy to just completely close them off given how shitty of situations they were?
No, so answer the later question. Like, no, it's not. There's no easy way to close that off. It's one of those things that, like, it's wild because there's a sound or a smell, like I was mentioning before, and it will just take me instantly back to that day. And it's physically draining to remind yourself and go through the process of, I'm not there. This is just a memory it triggered, but it's my body's deep rooted neurological response and how deep it is that it was every day for like the first 7.5 years. You're never going to forget that. Your body's never going to forget that, but you learn how to cope with it. And for me, that was sports. And that was kind of before sports, I was just active. I loved to climb trees. I was a monkey, and just my mom called me a spider monkey. And I loved to be active. And I didn't know I was doing it in a different way. And at that time when I had my legs, it was hurting. But I've always loved this, just this feeling when your body is moving through space and you're doing something and you have that control of it, and processing all that trauma and that early experience. And it wasn't all trauma. I had really good experiences too, and processing how the good and the bad. For me, that was through sports and through writing this book too. And honestly, Alex, I realized, oh my gosh, there's a lot I have not worked through too. And it's just going to be that everyday process. But sports is that outlet for me. Sweat it out.
Totally. And it's funny you mentioned like the book writing process because, when I think about writing a book, as someone who's has trouble sitting down and doing something for 15 minutes, thinking about writing an entire book seems like a Herculean task. But friends of mine who have written books, obviously they talk about the ability to tell a story and provide that story to the world and add value to people. But inevitably what ends up happening is kind of what you just mentioned, which is there's actually so much exploration that happens of yourself as you're writing a book because it's a forced function to do it. And you end up inevitably realizing there are things you haven't explored for the past several decades of your life.
Yeah, I'm really, really lucky because I had an amazing, my ghostwriter was Cassidy Randall for this book and my contributor, and she did an amazing job. I felt like I was talking to my best friend, and I was like talking, and these memories out of nowhere would come, and these tears are coming, and I'm like, I don't know where this is coming from. I'm so sorry. And she took, combined the words I was saying, and she took those emotions and turned them into art. So because it was something that I really didn't like a lot about my story was that it was always viewed as pity. It was very viewed as, I feel bad for you, and oh my gosh, it's so traumatic, and
Yeah.
bless your heart, you got through it. And that's before the amputation stuff. And I wanted to shine a light on that. You can come from those really messy experiences that are beyond your control, because I didn't realize they were beyond my control. I thought I deserved every part of everything that I experienced. And during that process of writing, it just, like you said to your friends too, it was very therapeutic. And I had to, in so many aspects, had to pretend like I was, especially doing the editing process, I had to go through and pretend like I'm reading about my friend, because it is so different when you dream the stuff, And then when you put words out there and you speak it, and then when you see the words and you're writing them and you're reading it, it just makes you realize, and made me realize, oh my gosh, this was my life. I cannot believe it. And then it helps me really realize like where I came from and how lucky I was to get out of that.
There's something really interesting you just said, and I just would be interested to hear kind of what you meant by it, which is, you know, over time you learn there are things outside of your control, but earlier on what happened to you are things that your perception was you deserved. What does that exactly mean to you? Like, what does that mean in context?
Okay, well, first of all, I was a troublemaker. I just didn't know when to stop. So a lot of things I brought on myself when I knew, because as a kid, bad attention, even if that would mean really bad punishment, would be at least some form of attention. And somebody would see that you're actually there and you're alive. And it was when I came to America is where I realized, like, well, I must have been a really, really bad girl, especially because I was told that for 2 years when my mom was trying to adopt me by the director of the orphanage there. And he said, this is why your mom's not coming for these years, because you're a bad girl and she sees it. And then when it's just you in an orphanage trying to fight to survive, I started to realize, like, I must be doing, I deserve it. I was bad. I did something bad. I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe it's because I look different and I'm smaller, or I didn't know. It's one of those things that you really, honestly, Alex, I don't think I can put into words of why I thought I deserved it. It was just one of the, I just kind of had a feeling like I knew, like, I messed up. I did something wrong. I deserve this, because why would this be happening? Why would this pain be happening? And then it was happening more to me, especially when I lost my friend, than some other people. So I realized, well, the only way bad things happen if you do bad. But then I didn't learn, because I still kept climbing the bookshelves and did things in the orphanage when they told me not to. And
it's interesting. I feel like in some ways it sounds like you conflated you just being a kid that, you know, seems like had a lot of energy and got into trouble from time to time. You conflated those experiences or those actions you took in life as like the justification for bad things that happened to you, when obviously one didn't necessarily have to do with the other in all aspects of life.
Yeah, totally.
You alluded to the 2 years that your mom spent to adopt you. Just talk for a second, especially for people who don't even know how the adoption process works. Like, what were some of the hurdles that she had to go through to ultimately adopt you after 2 years?
So and this is the wildest thing. Like, I've learned, my mom shared her experience with me when you were talking, but reading her side and going through the editing process in this book, I learned so much about my mom's process that I had no idea. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I can handle that or do that. And
what's an example
of that?
Fight
Through that. Well, so like my mom adopted me in 1997. She adopted me as a single parent. And she, at that time, adopting from Eastern European orphanages, you can't adopt as a single parent. And so she had to take all these psychiatric tests of, well, what's wrong with you because you're not married? Why don't you have a man? We need a father's name to put down here. And she was put through so much more on that end than a family that would go and adopt. And the paperwork, there was so much, like, and not to get all political with what's happening now, but a lot of the paperwork would get translated in Russian. But then because I was in Western Ukraine, they wouldn't even look at it. They rejected it all, and then would only look at it if it's in Ukrainian, because they are two different languages. And just timelines and waiting. And the biggest thing that was hard for my mom is Ukraine put a moratorium on which is a ban on all foreign adoptions. And she didn't know when that ban was going to be lifted. And so when she did her, I joke about how I'm like, oh, my mom got me from the bargain cave because I was like disabled and half off and I was old. And it's like one of those, like, it's okay to joke about. Like, you got to laugh at it sometimes. Mm-hmm. And it turned out to be really more expensive than she expected, because like all the paperwork was sent in, and then the ban happened, and everything expired. So then to redo everything all over again, and it was just. And then during that whole process too, they're just trying to tell her to go to Russia. You can get a baby within a month, and I think, my mom could not be any more different from me. We could not be any opposites. She loves to read. She's like a homebody, and I want to be active. I want to feel the wind through my hair.
Yeah.
But I learned grit and resiliency and not giving up through her and the process that she never gave up on me.
Well, I feel like it shines such an important light, first of all, on just the sacrifice that she had to go through that sometimes people don't necessarily appreciate adopting parents will go through. And especially in her case, like you said, as a single mother, like I'm sure there was so much emotional challenge she had to go through because, she was basically throughout the process being called out for being a single mother and saying like, in a way, whether it was said directly or not, like, what's wrong with you? So I can imagine.
They basically did. The courts basically did do that. And then the hardest thing, not the hardest thing, but they literally, they forced her to put a father's name down on the paperwork, and she put down some random person, and then she's like looking back, she's like, I should have put I don't know, some famous George Clooney or somebody famous on that.
That's hilarious. And I think the other thing is, to your point, and we'll talk more about your mom, but I think there's something so kind of beautiful in the way that you just laid out I would say, very obvious differences as people, like obvious kind of in kind of the external behaviors you put out into the world of like, you're super active, you like being outside, like she likes reading, she's a homebody. But at the end of the day, like the thing that actually matters is the mutual values that you guys share. And it sounds like the values that she taught you through her own behaviors, whether or not she was kind of an outdoor person or an indoor person. I feel like that's such a beautiful thing.
Oh, it totally is. And and that's the thing, is you don't have to walk each other's shoes and your interests can be so different, but that doesn't mean you can't learn from it and learn how to apply it to make you better person or help you in what I'm doing in my interests, and whether it's sports. And it was big time. I think about it all the time, and I'm like, I want to give up. I want to give, I don't know, this is literally impossible. But my mom lived through the impossible, and when she was being told to give up, she didn't give up. When she questioned it, she never gave up. And she's one of those people that she doesn't have to say the words for me to learn it. It's just, you see it through how she lives her life and how she approaches everything and obstacles. Even when I came to America and we didn't speak each other's languages, and how she was just so kind and learned body language. And
it sounds like she's just like an incredible teacher through action. Do you remember the first time that you met her? Do you remember that experience?
Yeah.
What was it like?
So it was in the middle of the night, and it was, I was throwing a hissy fit down the hallway because they told me my mom was going to come before we went to bed, but then travel, of course, delayed her arrival. And they said that we will wake you up when she comes. And I didn't want to go to bed because I thought if I go to bed, then she's not going to be there. And it was going to be a dream. And also that's what I heard for 2 years. And that middle of the night, it was where a lot of kids were gone. So it was just the 7 of us. So we were downstairs in the big room where we all slept in the same room. And I remember hearing sounds, and it was dark. And then I just see this dark shadowy figure, which it was my mom's coat with the fur around it because it was really, really cold. And she's like, I feel pressure on the bed, and she's like, they said, Oksana, do you know who this is? Obviously they're speaking in Ukrainian to me. And first thing I say is, I look at her and say, I know you, you're my mom. Instantly I claimed her and told her, well, you're my mom, so therefore you are not going to leave me. And then she gave me this stuffed animal that her mom actually had made for all of her kids to give to their own kids one day.
Oh, wow. That's so special. Do you still have the stuffed animal?
I do. It's like a little elephant, not Dumbo, but like an elephant type
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. That's beautiful.
It's at my mom's house because I'm a klutz and I destroy everything I touch. So if I want that thing to be preserved in one piece, it's staying at my mom's house until.
Seems like a very wise decision. Why do you think your mom was so incredibly determined to adopt you when, like you mentioned, it was an excruciating process? It took 2 years. There was the moratorium in Ukraine. She was challenged for being a single mother. She was told that she could adopt someone in a month from Russia. Like all of these things to basically say, here's your way out. Here's a faster option, a less emotionally provoking option. Why did she stick with it?
I have no idea. And I think she questioned it when she got me and we got home in our first month in America. And she's like, oh my gosh, this is what I get for adopting an opinionated 7, almost 8-year-old. But I have no idea because I wouldn't want to put up with me. I don't like to be by myself in a room because I'm a lot. But I think my mom, so she knew she always wanted kids. She said that. Like she loved Cheaper by the Dozen and she read all these books and they had these huge families and her dad, my grandpa came from a big family and she just wanted, it's kind of crazy because like she never really thought about like the relationship side of like having a husband and having like that family. She just wanted kids. And when I was in Ukraine, like all I wanted was a mom. I never really talked about or dreamed about a dad. I mean, I just really, really wanted a mom. That's the one thing I bonded to. And both of our answers were in a very long different timelines were finally answered in the outer space universe timeline than what we wanted. But I think my mom just also why she never gave up because what I learned through writing the hard parts is her story of what she persevered in as a female, getting a PhD and education and like that stuff that a lot of women were not respected for and were not really treated equally. And so she was constantly proving herself in the academic world as an independent female, as a single woman. And she's just always been independent and feisty and knew. Again, I don't know. Yeah. It's a really good question. I don't think she even knows the answer. It's just a connection.
Well, it also, partially seems like that's kind of, I think one of the values that you mentioned as you described her was kind of like this grit and resilience. I mean, I feel like that is exhibited in just kind of the process also that she went through is it almost feels like in some ways there was no other option for her. Like that was, she had a goal in mind. She had something she had visualized for so long.
Yeah.
And so she wasn't going to give up on that happening after she had committed to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, one of the biggest people that didn't believe she should do it and one of the hardest things was her own dad, my grandpa, like said, like, you can't, like, how are you going to do this on your own? And that stigma that was put on single parents and then raising and adopting and just the financial side and the disability side of medical needs and stuff. And so like that just shows the strength of her heart and her soul and just the sheer determination when your own parents tell you, your dad tells you like, well, why are you doing that? You can't even afford yourself and you can't provide for yourself. Why would you do this? Bring a child and adopt this. And she's just
It's remarkable.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard when people say like, describe your mom, because it's like one of those things you feel and you see, even though we fight like cats and dogs, because we are mother and daughter, we do have that mother-daughter relationship. We are close, but we do also, we fight, but like, she is my best friend. She is everything. She's my lessons. She's my reason why for everything. And it's just something that you have to experience and don't really have words for her because they don't exist yet.
We're going to take a quick break here, but when we come back, we'll hear about Oksana's life after she was adopted by her mother and the story of getting both her legs amputated. And then we get into how she got into sports and began competing at the highest level. Stay with us. I like to review my to-do list each morning, and here's one thing you should probably add to your list. Eating healthy, consistent meals every single day. One solution to checking that box is Huel, a healthy, high-protein meal that's ready in seconds and only requires 2 scoops with some water or milk. It can fit easily into your day, whether it's a quick lunch in between meetings or the breakfast you take on the go as you're rushing out the door. With 10 flavors to choose from, including cookies and cream, chocolate, and banana, Huel is an easy, tasty way of checking eat healthy meals today off your to-do list. Go to huel.com/imposters for a free t-shirt and free shaker with your first order. That's huel.com/imposters. I am always looking for ways to level up my routines. And I just learned about a mind-boggling stat about skincare routines specifically. 90% of the products go to waste. Yep, almost all of the ingredients in skincare products are either wiped or sweat off before they actually achieve anything. Here's the exciting part though. Droplet's patented microinfuser is solving this problem. It's a handheld device that transforms skincare serums into thousands of small, high-velocity micro drops, allowing the ingredients to absorb into the skin 20 times deeper than topicals. The Droplet device works with capsules of different formulas that you can infuse to suit your skin's needs. It's an easy addition to your daily routine that'll give you actual returns. Get 50% off your device at droplet.io and use code imposters. That's DROPLETTE.io, code imposters for 50% off. And we're back. Before the break, we heard about Oksana's troubling experience as an orphan and the many obstacles her adoptive mother had to go through in order to bring Oksana to the US. As Oksana reveals, growing up in America had its own set of challenges. It wasn't until she discovered rowing that she had found her passion in life. I want to push this story forward and, obviously one, let's call it, really special moment, but also a great challenge in both your life and her life was the adoption process. And then I would say after that came another great challenge, which was after she was finally able to adopt you and bring you to Buffalo, she was kind of your support for multiple operations, which included getting both of your legs amputated. Talk about in just the months and years after that, kind of what your process was for overcoming the physical challenges, but as importantly, how you navigated it emotionally, given, it's such a big part of your identity and sense of independence in life. Like, how did you work through these things?
Well, I didn't have like a typical kid, just like sometimes really angry and just very mad at the world.
Yeah.
But the first surgery, my mom made the choice for me to amputate my first leg, and she waited till I was home for a year. So I bonded with her, and I knew what a mom was. I felt home and learned the language, so that way I don't wake up and just like, oh my God, where's my legs? I can't speak English and my legs are gone. She thought that would be kind of cruel to do to me, which was a great call on her part. And so she made that choice. And honestly, that first transition from that amputation, I don't know if it's because I was 9 and kids are just so resilient when things like that happen. I just moved forward so fast, and I never really thought about it and let it. And then it was also, it needed to be done. I had more independence because of it and the prosthetic it would provide me. It was the second amputation where I was given an option, but not really an option. I was given a timeline of, hey, this is your option of when you want to get this done, but here's your 2-week window of when we need to do it, kind of thing. You got to love those. Oh, hey, it's up to you, but here's the dates. Pick that. And you're like, okay, cool.
Yeah, no real option.
Yeah. And the second one is where it was really, really hard. And before the second amputation, we moved from Buffalo, New York to Louisville, Kentucky. And of course I resented my mom because she took me from home, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what is in Kentucky? Does that mean I had to listen to country music, which I like now? But, and then she said, well, you'll find new loves there. And I found sportive rowing at the Louisville Adoptive Rowing Club there. And that was kind of where I kind of had the first start at processing the first amputation. And then when I got the news that I would have to make the decision for my second one, I went back to rowing on that dock and just processed it all there. And finally, like, the pain, it just got to a point where it was unbearable and I had to
Yeah.
have it for that freedom, the independence. So I decided to have it amputated, and it was not a smooth transition. It was really, really challenging. And that's the one that I physically and emotionally was just really angry about. There's a lot that happened within that amputation that misleading and lies and just difficulties in the recovery process. And that's all I could think about was getting on that water. And I don't know where I would honestly be or how I would have that process to mentally process everything if I didn't get on that water in the boat and have that to look forward to.
Do you think, you just mentioned that the second amputation was way harder for you than the first, and the first amputation you mentioned, it was when you were 9 years old, and you said you don't know if you think it was the type of thing where when you're a kid you're just so resilient, and so you just like quickly, it was like a reflex to just adapt to your situation and just kind of do whatever
I wanted to
you
go
do.
play on like with my friends or on the
Totally. So why was it that the second amputation was so much harder? Was it a function of age and more kind of awareness of what this meant? Was it because of the challenges that you experienced where you felt like you were misled and there were different complications with this process? Was it all of them? Like, how would you sum up why it was harder?
Well, I guess the biggest reason why it was harder is my first amputation. So I was in, like, my amputations are both above the knee. The left one, which is the first one when I was 9, within a month after that amputation, I was up and walking in a prosthetic leg. But I also knew what that meant. So they gave me an option they were amputated, but we were talking about the amputation process. When I referred to the misleading, they promised me when I made this choice, like, okay, I'm ready to have my leg amputated. I was 14 at that time. Okay, so as a female, as a girl, a 14-year-old girl, if you have a bad hair day or a pimple, it is the end of the world. Like, imagine if you have another pylon and metal sticking out of your leg. That's just going to be not cute for the clothes and shoes at all. And that's where my mind was going. I'm a girl after all. I love fashion.
Yeah.
But I also knew, and I told them, like, look, I'm ready to amputate my leg under one condition, and that is if it's below the knee. Because a lot of people don't realize for every joint you're missing, it's entirely different. So I knew what I was missing as an above knee amputee. I was missing a knee and a foot. So I was already walking different. And they promised me a deep below the knee. I wake up after the surgery and it is amputated. I try to get up and it's amputated above the knee. And I fall back because I don't have that leverage below the knee. And that's where I lost it and thought my life was over. I've never really seen an amputee before. I had all these amputations except one, and she was a below the knee amputee. And of course you can do all these things because you have your knee that you're dependent on. And so that change, they planned for it to be below the knee. It changed. It led me to be in the hospital for 6+ months, stuck to a bed for a wound back. That's my Ukrainian in me. The W's and the V's still come out. And then I'm 14. So I'm like not seeing my friends now. I'm not going to school. And now in my mind, I look like I've just like, my life's over. I have literally no legs above the knee. And I've never seen anyone that looks like me to walk. On top of that, the wrong leg was numbed. So I was in an excruciating amount of pain. And it was just a lot of anger. And that's where the anger for me kind of started building, and resentment. And then on top of all that, it was around the same times that my memories from Ukraine were coming back that I suppressed, and I lied to my mom and said nothing happened. I had a great experience and all this stuff. And it was just that volcano and that pressure. And then that second amputation was that one that just took the lid off. And
what was your relationship with your mom after that surgery? Like, was your anger directed at the doctors? Was it also directed at her?
No.
How did she support you during that period of time?
No, it was not directed at my mom. I feel so bad because my mom feels guilty for putting me in that position, but she didn't put me in that position. It was just bad luck in being around one too many power plants when I was in my mom's birth mom's stomach. And I feel bad that she feels guilty for it. Like she feels responsible. And I think that's just a mother's going to always feel that way. I felt angry at just the world. And I felt angry at the hospital and the doctors. And I felt lied and betrayed too. And that's exactly how I viewed it as. And then I fell into this depression and eating disorder and all this stuff happened through the hospital because that's the one thing you can control about myself. And there's not one day where I blamed my mom at all.
Yeah.
Like for this. That thought never even came through my mind. My mom, she literally, so this happened in Lexington, Kentucky. We lived in Louisville, Kentucky. Every morning and every night, she would drive to be there with me after work and spend the night. In the morning, my grandparents or a couple of her friends and family would come and take her place during the day when she drove back 2 hours to work a full day.
Wow.
And do that. And she did that every single day.
How long did it take you to make peace with what had happened?
Oh, Alex, honestly, I'm still working on it.
Yeah.
Because it's frustrating. If it happened, I know my left leg, I'm fine, whatever. It's the second one where it's frustrating. I'm somewhat at peace, but then there's days and moments where I'm just like, I want that perfect knee pop kiss. Like, you know, when a girl, if you kiss someone, you just pop your knee up. And I could do that if I was below the knee. And just those small things. Or the different types of like high heel shoes and just, just like the small things like that make you realize.
It's I think also just like what you kind of call attention to that, like, you know, that I've never thought about it. I'm sure a lot of people haven't. Is just like these very like small changes that have such an outsized impact on not only just like your ability from a movement perspective, but also what those movements signify in terms of your identity as a woman.
Yeah, absolutely. And then on top of and then that is all happening as a 14-year-old girl. So I'm not even 16 yet where I get all like, you think you have the whole world figured out and you realize, oh my gosh, there's nothing left for me. No one's going to ever want to love me. Like why I wouldn't want to, I don't love myself when I look in the mirror. And that was like also just, it took a long process and I still am processing through it all. But now I'm at the point where I can kind of smile about it and have fun with it. And I just say, like, I have best of both worlds because I can downsize to 4 feet. Thank God. And I know I'm 4 feet because that is the minimum height you have to be for a water slide to go down. Because I got into argument with that person and they tried to tell me you're too short after I crawled up all the stairs and I'm sort of my taller leg.
Yeah, and you're like, there's no shot I'm going back down the stairs.
Yeah, no. I sort of my taller leg and I'm like, I'm 4 feet, see? Like,
yeah.
And yeah, I won that argument.
You know, I feel like, at least from everything you're saying, it seems like you're in a really great place, relatively speaking, in the sense that you can have this lightness around just the context of your life that allows you to joke about it, but also makes complete sense that all of this shit that you've been through, that it probably takes a lifetime to work through. And that's just a function of your experience.
Yeah. And I think this is, so like I wrote also the hard parts in my memoir because there's so many things you blame yourself and you have all these moments that like just can either have this negative moment and you choose to live in it forever in that negative dark hole of why me, or you find these outlets that are healthy that you can process it where you don't have to talk about it. You find your way to process it. And you know, it's not one of those things you work through and it's a check mark off next. It's never going to affect me ever again. There's always a memory. Like we're human. We're going to have these bad days, whether they're like these trauma that brings it up, a smell or a job or relationships, whatever it is. Like it's not a check mark that you just you overcome it, is done, and that's okay. I think because a lot of people, in the way it's like really perceived, is like you work through it, it's done, next, and
Yeah,
then
just
what
gone.
happens in 20 years from now when all of a sudden you're like, why am I crying? Why am I freaking out? And you realize it's because of this. Like, it's going to always be there, and it's learning how to. And I wanted to shine a light on that. Like, it's okay. Like, it's not
Totally.
about being check mark on to the next. Life's going to get better. It is going to get better, but like these memories, you can use these type of things in a positive way.
Yeah, and I think it's just about also developing tools that allow you to
Yeah.
face these things in a productive way where you don't put a pressure on yourself, you don't have expectations, but it allows you to still live the life you want to live, even if certain days are shitty and other days are great.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think it was really important to like kind of set the table of our conversation by talking through just like what your childhood and young adult experience was like. And I want to talk about sports now because obviously it's been such an important piece of your life. Can you talk about after your second amputation and after the 6 months of being in the hospital, how long did it take for you to get back into being able to participate in sports? And also, how long did it take for you to like really get serious about sports, like where you took it to the next level that, you know, you're at today?
That transition after the amputation from the hospital happened fast because there was a tree that was moving out of the window. And I'm a very like philosophical and very like live my life through metaphors. And I'm like, that I'm going to be that tree. Like, you're going to be solid, but you're going to be the leaves and the twigs, everything are going to be moving. And the minute I'm outside and I can actually move my body, I'm never going to stop and sit still. And that I started about rowing and I can't wait to get back on it. And when I got there, I think I had a very different, it wasn't just like fun and recreational. It was where it became therapy because at that time I like was also working through therapy, but it was my actual therapy where I could just like throw everything that I had and keep it within myself and in the boat and just me and the water. And that happened pretty quickly. And the Louisville Adoptive Rowing Club, Bobby Hurley, he got me out extra. And that transition happened really, really fast. Went through like some races within the next year for the most part, because it is a seasonal sport. You can't just get in the winter. When I think I really got serious with it, so I started rowing when I was 13, but it really wasn't until I was 17-ish, around that time, where Bobby and Randy, Randy was director of the program there and Bobby was the coach, said, hey, you have a future in the Paralympics. And I'm like, what the heck is a Paralympics? Like, I didn't even know what it was. Yeah. I didn't know how to, I did that cliche that everyone does that drives me insane. They call it Para-Olympics, and it's not Para-Olympics, it's Paralympics. And then there's the Olympics. And so I had to Google it and figure out what it was. And I'm also very competitive by nature. Like, my mom learned this right away when we tried to play goldfish, and I do not do well.
There was only one winner of the game. One
winner. There's one time where I cheated to let her win because I'm like, ooh, my mom can't win. This is bad. I couldn't handle it. When I was cheating to let her win, I couldn't handle that loss. So I'm very competitive. And I'm also banned from playing Risk also because I get very passionate when I compete and play games. I loved the idea of representing something bigger than yourself and wearing red, white, and blue. And I was like, okay. And then once I gave him the word, I'm serious. It was about a yes, long answer to answer your question. How long did it take? About like 4 years after that, really. And then so I tried like 3 to 4 years, set my sights on 2008 Paralympics. Did not make that at all. And then, it's one of those things where sometimes it's so cliche. It's like you have to lose something to really realize how much it means and how much you really want something. But that's exactly what happened that's the moment when I didn't make that team and set that goal, is when I realized I actually want this. This isn't just like a goal and check it off. Like, I want to do it and I want to do it well.
You won your first gold medal in 2018, right?
First Paralympic gold. Yeah,
First yeah.
Yeah, 4 years after starting. So I competed in London, Rio, Sochi, and it was my fourth Paralympic Games that I
Yeah.
finally won it.
And there's an excerpt from your memoir where you say the media love to show airbrushed, buttoned up versions of the people we put on pedestals. What they often fail to capture is the rough road barricaded in setbacks along the way, the hard parts that can drive a will to succeed. Can you just talk a little bit about some of the obstacles and pressures and barricades that you encountered along this pretty arduous journey to ultimately win gold?
Yeah, so that just drives me crazy because media does. They shine the light and they see you in the moment that you've been working for such a long time. And then it's like perceived as like, oh, it finally happened the first time you try it. Like when I first got into it and I decided to be serious, the director of all of rowing for adaptive side looked at me and just like looked at my body size and was judged me on my body builds of, well, you don't have what it, first of all, how dare she say, like, I don't have what it takes to be an elite athlete, but then also my body size. And my body, of course, I'm smaller build, but I can change that. And she has no idea that that was like that last coal and that threw in the fire pit that like really just made my fire within me like roar, because my whole entire life I was told like what I can and can't do and everyone's perceptions of me. And that was, I think, the hardest thing is when someone told you, well, you can never make it, it's unrealistic. And then financially, a lot of people don't realize right before Sochi 2014 games of the winter, I misjudged my money. My mom was helping me a lot. She was misjudged it. I ended up sleeping out of my car. And for like right before we leave for Sochi, which actually worked out great because I ended up losing weight because of it, because I couldn't eat that much. So then I was lighter to climb up the hills, and then I ended up getting 2 medals that were not expected. So I guess it worked out somehow. But like that stuff that and the start line, I remember of that, like sleeping out of my car, going to pick up a teammate to go drive to train, and then little do they know is I don't even have a place to sleep. And I kept it all within myself because it's embarrassing to not train for something and everyone thinks you're representing Team USA and you're in your car sleeping. And equipment side of things, everything was financially like on our own. We didn't have the resources, and it didn't. And then when that moment, that gold medal happened, of course, I'm a klutz and I had a catastrophic injury that almost ruined my whole like games for 2018. And then I had an incredible team around me there to help me get that gold.
Why was it worth it to you to sleep in your car? Like when you make really, I would say, difficult decisions in life like that, right? Like you chose to sleep in your car to go to competition, even though maybe at times you felt embarrassed by it because you were representing Team USA, but you were living out of a car. Like, why was it worth it?
Well, I'm a person that I believe like when I start something, I want to finish it through. I don't care what place it is. I'm going to see where I am in every effort that I put in. And I don't believe in just quitting just because one setback or one car. And I don't know if it's because of my experience in the orphanage, but, you know, in that moment, I was like, okay, I've been here before. It was a comfortable place for me because I, as a kid, learned how to make food in one bite last 2 hours long. And it was worth it for me to prove, especially in that, like, prove I belong. I'm an athlete and I'm capable of being an elite athlete, not just the recreational athlete, and I had to prove it to myself. And also like for that, like what my biggest inspiration is like that little girl, the 7-year-old me, or that 7-year-old boy or girl that is either had an accident or is just also born without legs or whatever their circumstances are, to know like they can dream and they're like to see themselves, have a physical representation of themselves doing something and thriving. And that was really important for me to fulfill it or not fulfill it, but like
To be that example.
to be that example and just like, you know what,
Yeah.
that means sleeping out of a car, I sleep out of my car. It's
It's
thankfully, it was great. I actually had a TV in my car. The seals were all gone, so it was really drafty in Winter Park, Colorado, because it was like really cold there. But I had a TV and I just watched, oh my God, Shrek way too many times because that was back when you had DVDs.
It's a great movie. I would watch it multiple times if I could also. One last question for you. You've both endured more in a lifetime than, I'd wish on anyone, and you've accomplished more in a lifetime than most people would dream of. You're a really competitive person, and like you said, once you start something, there's no option other than to finish it. What's next for you?
Well, what's next is my memoir, The Hard Parts, is officially coming out. Oh my gosh, February 21st, and I am like, get to call myself an author now. Alongside,
cool.
oh my gosh, it's wild. But athletically, I'm not done. I love sports. I'll probably be that 60-year-old, and you'll have to rip me out of the start line, or Master Blaster, still training and racing. But Paris 2024 and Milan 2026 Winter Games are what's on the horizon, hopefully. And I would be amazing to end my athletic career in the LA 2028 Games.
I love it. Well, I'll be rooting you on. Oksana Masters, thank you so much for joining Imposters.
Thank you so much, Alex.
When I first read about Oksana's story, it reminded me how resilient the human body is. But also, after talking with Oksana, she is living proof that you don't have to be confined by your circumstances. What I appreciated most about my conversation with Oksana was how lighthearted and joyful her demeanor was, despite all the obstacles she's faced in her life. If you're someone who's looking for inspiration, just do a quick search for Oksana Masters, and you'll definitely find her story is one that will resonate with many people. It certainly resonated with me.
Thank you guys so much for watching this episode. I hope you enjoyed, and I'd love to hear from you. Share in the comments your favorite part of this episode, and also what guest you would love to see on Imposters moving forward. And finally, like and subscribe so you get content from this show every single week. I'll see you guys next time.